this presentation of critical theory, we'll focus on the queer theory. What is critical theory? How can critical theory be used in transgender feminism, gender roles for females and stereotypes, criticism in society for transgender women, in media, religion beliefs, medical professions, metrics of domination, social acceptance improvement, what has been done to make it more social acceptable, what is social transformation, steps for social transformation, and goals for social transformation as well.
Queer theory, which is branched under critical theory, came to light in the early 1990s as the LGBT community began their rise to eminence. Judith Butler is one of the founders of this theory, who is currently a professor at the University of California, Berkeley, and identifies as lesbian. One of her main contributions to this theory is the idea of identity being free and flexible and sex as a performance, not an essence, meaning that there is a slightly versatile relationship here, and only through performance, repetition, and ritualized productions, a person's true identity and sex can be revealed and formed fully, which cannot always be determined during the time of birth of an individual. It's a lot more complex and subjective than that when looking at gender, identity, and sex through the theoretical framework of queer theory. So one of the main issues currently lies in the mainstream social definitions, and shifting these terms to more fluid concepts rather than concrete for the masses would certainly lead to some substantial social progress. Originally developed at the Frankfurt School in the 1930s, critical theory simultaneously seeks to assess, critique, and emancipate society as a whole by way of the application of the social sciences and the humanities. And by doing so, certain institutional and ideological forces are brought into question that have historically dehumanized certain groups and individuals within our society, which has undeniably made it more difficult for these groups to be truly emancipated from the change of the social norms that are pressed onto them. It further seeks to find a solution where there is an equilibrium met for the inferior or oppressed party, and these solutions must both be practical and achievable in efforts to meet a purposive remodeling of the current social reality. The theory also must meet the criteria of being explanatory and normative in order to be considered critical.
What's wrong with the social reality is that transgender feminism is criticized through society in various ways. This includes societies that considers it to be a deviant behavior or not acceptable in certain societies. As a result of not being accepted in certain societies, they face stigmas and labeling of inappropriate names, going through stereotypes and rejection in society. Among those who are rejected, they may feel they do not fit into society, and may feel they excluded from the social norms that includes acquiring a specific job, or may feel they cannot perform a certain task in society. Continuing off the social reality, society criticizes that transgender women are not real women because no matter of all the alterations done, the chromosomes in their genes cannot be altered to represent a female chromosome. Therefore, transgender females will express a gene showing an XX rather than an XY. Going based off of this, society criticizes that altering a gene is more of a social decision rather than going off what a chromosome shows.
Throughout time, society created some gender roles for females. So, gender roles in society means how we are expected to act, speak, dress, groom, and conduct ourselves based upon our assigned sex based on what society says it is morally the right thing to do, of what it means to be female, as well as what to expect from a male. Stereotypes about gender can cause unequal and unfair treatments because of a person's gender. Being having to identify themselves with one gender when they really still are not ready to identify themselves makes it hard for transgender females to understand how to fit into society. There are four gender stereotypes: personally, personality traits, domestic behavior, occupations, and physical appearance. When we talk about personality traits, it's for example, women are often expected to be accommodating and emotional, while men are usually expected to be self-confident and aggressive. Domestic behavior, for example, some people expect that women will take care of the children, cook and clean the home, while men take care of finances, work on the car, and do the home repairs. Occupations, some people are quick to assume that teachers and nurses are women and that pilots, doctors, and engineers are men. physical appearance, for example, women are expected to be thin and graceful, while men are expected to be tall and muscular. Men and women are also expected to dress and groom in ways that are stereotypically to their gender. Women wearing dresses and makeup. As an effect of this, transgender women feel pressure to look feminine when some not able to afford surgery to change their appearance and hormones. Instead, they use liquid silicones or falsies to make their hips, their breasts, and their butt look larger, which makes them sometimes be in danger for not doing the correct surgical procedures due to them having the pressure of identifying themselves with some gender role that they're supposed to fit into society.
Transgender feminism, along with the LGBTQ society, can both be criticized in unexpected forms that include media, religion, and in medicine. In terms of media, in 2017, President Trump's ban of transgender individuals in the military made individuals feel socially excluded and rejected from certain tasks available in society. In another situation of exclusion, it was seen on the episode of Survivor in 2017, where an individual got outed for being transgender. In the other side of the spectrum, criticism does not always have to be negative, but it could be positive, such as the situation with Bruce Jenner's transformation to Caitlyn Jenner, on which it raised a lot of public discussion by criticizing and opening doors to transgender individuals. In religion, it has been seen that it is highly associated with higher levels of negative attitudes towards the LGBTQ community, and has been found that biblical literature and church attendance both correlate to higher levels of prejudice. The higher an individual attends church and reads any form of biblical text, the higher the prejudice and negative attitude towards the LGBTQ community. As well, religious communities tend to be the most distant from the LGBTQ community. The reason for such belief and distance is because Old Testament and religious texts describe anyone associated with the LGBTQ community a condemnation, which means having an expression of strong disapproval. Instead, the religious text believes in a traditional family style, which includes an ideal couple of a female and a male, and accepting oneself for the way they were born. Throughout history, transgender individuals were criticized for wanting to look and act differently. The switching of one sex to another sex was considered to be a deviant behavior and considered to be a medical disorder. But it wasn't until the 1960s in which medicine improved for physical alterations due to having a higher acceptance in society. But as of today, transgender individuals are affected by medicine because a majority of them do not have access to health care and have to pay for transgender specific care out of pocket. The reason for this is because the majority of transgender individuals have a higher rate of unemployment, on which was reported to be likely due to employment discrimination or not feeling socially accepted in the workplace. As for those who have insurance, many insurance exclude coverage for gender-affirming medical intervention because they are considered to be medically unnecessary for an individual. The last point here is that some doctors do not have the knowledge in the LGBTQ community, and for this reason, many doctors do not want to perform surgery or will refuse any type of surgery.
The matrix of domination is defined as a sociological paradigm that explains issues of oppression that deal with race, class, and gender. Though recognized as different social classifications, they are all interconnected. Or to use Professor Frame's definition from the lecture on critical theory, one's position in society is made up of multiple contiguous standpoints rather than one essentialist standpoint. So how does this layering of oppressions affect transgender women? Transgender women of color experience discrimination based on a culmination of their race, socioeconomic status, and gender, all at the same time. Additional classifications include education levels, disability, sexuality, and even age. What can the matrix of domination potentially look like for a transgender female? As you can see from following the arrows, the matrix of domination discriminates an individual and places them on a path that is lacking in resources with no clear exit. So for example, if an individual identifies as transgender, this gender identity that does not conform to societal standards like mentioned previously It can affect the type of job or lack thereof they may attain. No job or a low-paying job can lead to poverty. Poverty can then lead to stress and poor mental health. Since most healthcare is tied to employment, if they are lacking a job and its healthcare package, mental health problems can go unchecked. Poor mental health can keep an individual from holding a job and the benefits associated with being employed. Though this slide shows a linear path, this matrix can have an individual continuously going in circles. The image on the left, produced by the National Coalition of Anti-Violence Programs, shows the growing number of murders against the LGBTQ community. This data from 2011 states that 87% of the anti-LGBT murders that occurred were against people of color. Additionally, 45% of those murders were specifically against transgender individuals. How can transgender females start having social acceptance? Education is the most important. It gives the opportunity to understand the transgender community and understand how we can all inform other people of ways in which we can change or decrease the amount of stereotypes among transgender women. Listen to transgender people. The best way to be an ally is to listen with an open mind to transgender people speaking for themselves. Talk to transgender people in your community. Check out books, films, YouTube channels, and trans blogs to find out more about transgender people and the issues people within the community face.
What has been done to make it more acceptable? Equal protection clause of the federal constitution or federal laws prohibiting discrimination based on gender identity. Also, Barack Obama issued an executive order prohibiting discrimination against transgender people in employment by the federal government. Back in 2016, the Department of Education and Justice issued a letter to schools receiving federal funding protection to apply to gender identity or transgender students, advising schools to use the student's preferred name and pronouns and to allow use of bathrooms and locker rooms for the student's gender identity. People have the right to marry without regard to their gender, according to the Overwhelm v. Hudgens same-sex marriage, which was applied. And the opening of public services that empower individuals and communities makes it possible for society to understand what it means to be transgender. And the attitudes are being changed. We are becoming a more diverse, acceptable society due to this opening of public services that make society understand and be more open to transgender people.
What is social transformation? Social transformation can be defined as a large-scale social change through cultural reform by changes in society's systematic characteristics. These characteristics include technological, economic, political, and cultural changes. Social transformation can take many forms and affects all types of society in both developed and less developed regions. There are 5 steps to social transformation. The 5 steps are forming, storming, norming, performing, and transformation. The forming stage is forming a group through individual and organizational behavior. The storming stage is where different ideas compete for consideration. The norming stage is the common perspective on the systemic nature of the group which influence growth outside and inside other organizations. The performing stage is the promotion of new knowledge and seeking innovative ideas for solving existing problems in society. The transformation stage is the last and final stage where there is a creation of a meaningful and significant change to a society's construction makeup that positively impacts the society. This process is what transgender feminists undergo through their attempt at the current change in social transformation in regards to their lifestyle and values being accepted in society without persecution.
Goals for social transformation. The goal for social transformation is to bring about new changes and new patterns that create a shift or alteration to the organization of a society. From this final goal, it is possible for a society's value normative system to change. With regards to transgender feminism, the goal for activists is to gain public acceptance of the lifestyle and for proper integration into society to interact in harmony. Although the world is not perfect, the acceptance of someone being transgender would limit prejudice and hate in society.